Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal's Polyglot Software Development Podcast. Our guest today is Rachel Galperin. Rachel is the founder and CEO of Next Found Artist. This innovative platform empowers independent filmmakers with essential tools for collaboration, distribution, and marketing. Rachel is passionate about amplifying diverse voices in the film industry and fostering deeper engagement between filmmakers and their audiences. Thank you so much for taking time, Rachel. I'm super stoked to chatting with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you wouldn't mind giving a quick introduction about yourself to our audience, and then we can just get rolling with the topic right after.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Rachel, and I'm the founder and CEO of Next Found Artist. And we are really passionate about being able to help communities, both from a viewer standpoint and then also from an artist standpoint, really find that sense of belonging through the power of art.
Awesome. And then, we're going to discover more about your platform and what you do, during the next 45 minutes to an hour. So the topic for today, we picked a broader topic. So, like almost all our podcast is going to be very conversational. So the highest level, the topic we've sort of picked is exploring the intersection of technology and creativity in building platforms for independent filmmakers. Now, this is very exciting because, I've not had the opportunity to chat with a filmmaker, at least on a podcast previously. So if you could talk a little bit about Next Found Artist, what you do, like what your interests are, and then, I'll do a screen share here so folks also see while you're actually explaining this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we are a web-based platform, but how this all started was um, so I started in the film industry, but prior to that, I loved film growing up. There's always those two kids who are one who sits in front of the TV trying to consume as much as you can, or there's one who's carrying on the camcorder trying to film as much as they can. I was the kid who was sitting in front of the TV trying to consume as much as I could. And so what I was doing was obviously looking for a form of entertainment, but I was also looking for a community, for a sense of belonging. And when I couldn't find what it was that I was looking for, my love of film really elevated and I started to write. So I aspired to become a screenwriter. And when I was in the film industry, it was just glaring the lack of diversity that's throughout the entire creative process. And when you don't have diversity, you don't allow for different perspectives of different communities and of different cultures. So really listen to what the pain points are in the industry, and there's kind of plenty that are going on. But the three biggest ones that we heard in the feedback was the funding capability for original voices, collaboration capabilities, so getting access to opportunities that
Hey
they
Rachel, let me do this. Sorry, let me do a screen share and actually draw this up because I don't draw very well, but I'd love to visualize this pictorially, and I think it'll sort of help folks also digest what you're saying here. Give me 1 second. Let me go. You see my screen here, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I'm only familiar with like 4 different shapes, so you're going to see how ridiculously simple this diagram is and going to be. Okay, I'm going to say intersection of technology and creativity. Okay, you said three things, right? Can you say that again, Rachel?
Sure. Funding.
Okay, and what are these three items? Like, what are these three? What category do these three? You said the challenges. Though these are the three challenges, right?
Correct. These are
Okay.
the sort of the three biggest pain points that
Oh,
we
the pain
receive
points. Perfect. Okay. First one
from
is
the artists themselves that they face in the film.
okay. First one is funding. Okay. What is the next one?
Collaboration.
And then we can dig deeper into each of these. Collaboration. Okay. Flame sharing my screen. Yep. Perfect. Yep.
Yes.
And then the next one.
Distribution.
Okay. Okay. While I type this, we can get started with the first of the. But before we even go into this, just so I understand, so you said you're a screenwriter, which is awesome. Um, the nextfoundartist.com, the platform is also something you own, right? You're a screenwriter, but from a technology standpoint, you own the platform as well.
Correct. So out of the three pain points, we're starting with the distribution piece. And so that's what our platform is helping to solve for right now. And so what that means from a distribution standpoint is, how are all of these films that people are creating getting seen and accurately able to, um, there's so much content out there, and there's so many other sites or platforms that people could go to view. So why us? So what we're helping to solve for from the distribution standpoint is it making it more accessible and easier to find the content that is really personalized to each of the consumers.
Okay, so does that mean, and is it all right if I interrupted you as we went along, just so I follow through here? So let's say I'm a creator, right? I create content, and I'm going to ask some silly questions just so I understand this, and hopefully some of it makes sense. Uh, let's say we're talking about creative content. How is this different from somebody creating content and posting on, say, YouTube, for instance? What is the fundamental difference here?
Yep, great question. So the biggest difference is, one, we assist with the marketing. So what we do is every Thursday we release a film on our platform. And leading up to that release, we are assisting with the marketing, and our marketing efforts go back to identifying and amplifying who the filmmaker is. So our marketing is going back to, what was the filmmaker's inspiration? Why did they get into art? Why was this story so important to tell? What stories are they eager to tell? We're really bridging that gap between that human connection and the art and the artist, and the audience. So we're helping them with the marketing versus just throwing it onto YouTube and it getting kind of lost in the abyss. And then secondly is, our platform eliminates the endless scrolling. So what that means is that we don't have genres. We actually have community tags, and the community tags tie back to the cast and crew and the content and topics. So when a consumer comes in and they select on the communities, we are filtering through our catalog for the consumers. And so it is a personalized experience every single time that a viewer comes in to view them. So right now,
Okay.
we're just, and just an update is that we are doing a re-release of the platform in a month. So underneath, so this section that I'm discussing right now will live under today's vibe. But if you select into a film, so if you select on
Sand dunes, yeah.
Yep. And if you scroll down to the right, there are community tags. So these tags, coming of age, there are still genres that people can select for drama, but there's a lot more granular tags and communities. So for example, some of the other communities that we have are women, for women directors or women actors or women crew. There's anxiety, there's psychedelics, there's motherhood, there's fatherhood, there's grief, there's, you name it. We have over 50 community tags right now that tie back to the cast and crew and the content and the topics. And
Okay,
so
so just so I understand, in other words, in layman's terms, the difference between, if you go to YouTube, you see all kinds of content, right? Not everything is creative. I mean, I could pick up a camera and just vlog and talk about how my day went about. Is
great.
one of the fundamental differences that content that is on your platform is actually creative content, meaning there is a story, somebody's actually acting, and then that's the type of content that's being published.
It's all premium content. Yeah. So all of our films have gone through the festival route. So, and they just haven't been picked up for distribution. So that's really what our purpose is, and our mission is to help these filmmakers amplify, find their communities, build their communities, and be able to have a following for their either next film, or to be able to help them transition to a larger distribution.
Okay, and then which means when before a piece of content or a film gets published on your platform, it's going through sort of a review process, if you will. In other words, people cannot just go in and say, you know what, I sign up and then I post whatever I want to post, right?
Right. There is a submission requirement that we do require. And so those focus on just certain quality is
So
really,
so in other words, it goes through a review process. Can I
yeah,
say it's a
there's
review
a review.
process?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. And then the does it cost the actual, just I'm jumping guns here, but just to understand this. So let's say the content is created and goes through the review process. Uh, what does it typically cost the filmmaker, the creator, to have you host their content on your platform?
Right now, there's no fee associated with it.
Oh, okay. And for folks to watch it, they sign up and you would have to pay some sort of a subscription, I presume, right?
Nope. We're the thing is too is that viewers don't want another subscription model. So it's shown through the data and through the research that most individuals, they're not loyal to a subscriber, they're loyal to the content. So therefore they're switching content and they're switching providers every 6 months. We don't want to put that other barrier into the reference and into the way of people being able to consume things that helps them feel a sense of belonging. So we're actually switching and we're going to an AVOD model, which is an ad revenue model. So meaning we will be introducing um, pre-roll ads that happen prior to the film starting, but there will not be a subscription fee for consumers to come in and be able to view the content that allows them to feel that sense of belonging, feel that sense of community.
Ah, I got it. Okay, cool. So in other words, it's an ad-based model, so it's a little bit like you're purchasing a Netflix ad-based plan, and you're watching those ads, and that's sort of how you monetize, but people don't have to pay to watch that content.
Exactly.
Okay, okay, awesome. So now we said three challenges, right? I know if we went into the specifics of it, but let's start with, say, funding, for instance. And when we talk about, these are pain points, not so much for you hosting the platform, right, Rachel? You're talking about these are pain points for creators for creating content so they can even publish it on your platform.
Correct.
Okay, if you do you want to speak to each of these in a little bit more detail?
Sure. So funding, which means like getting the ability to raise the funds to be able to tell the story, to make the story, to make the film, to promote the film, to submit it to festivals or and and do all the marketing and everything along those lines. That obviously takes um, financial commitment to that. So, but it's very difficult for original voices, diverse voices, marginalized voices to be able to raise those funds. So what we're doing and helping to solve for is through our um, ad revenue model, we will be doing a revenue share with the filmmakers as well, so that they're able to um, hopefully continue making the art that they want to continue making.
Okay, cool. So you're sort of helping, creators be able to make this content that they want to create by this revenue share model. So when they create this content, is there a sense of exclusivity? Meaning, if I published it on your platform, I'm not able to publish it on other platforms, or is the creator able to publish their film on multiple platforms?
Um, that is something that we are working through right now. Um, right now, we are non-exclusive, but as we grow and as we transition, we may be looking back at that.
Makes sense. No, absolutely right. Makes sense. Yep. Okay, so that's from anything else to funding before we go to the next two items?
Um,
Actually,
no,
I have one question. As somebody who runs a startup, and like I mentioned you before the call, we create content. That's not our core business, but sometimes to help our marketing, we have to create content, and we see which one resonates with the audience, what type of content it is. Sometimes it's more often than not it's technical content, but there's other times which when we try not to be technical, and of course we fall a lot more flat when that happens, but we still give it a shot. But what is it typically? I mean, a couple of basic questions. Like the length of the films that are getting published on your platform. I presume it's not full length feature films, right? So are we talking more like short films, like 20-30 minutes, or what is the
yeah,
typical length?
exactly. So we do have feature films, we have documentaries, we have narratives, but we really focus on amplifying short films. And so we do see the rise of short form content wanted through consumers, and especially for the 18 to 34-year-olds, that shorter form content is what people are able to really um, sit through and be entertained by. So our films that we have on our platform, they are primarily the short films, and so we have anywhere that is from a 5-minute film all the way until a 40-minute film. But primarily, most of our films are under 40 minutes, and they just the great thing about short films is that they are very compelling stories. They're amazing stories. They're very well written, and you're able to experience a full film and a full storyline and still feel that inspiration, that community, that um, full emotional roller coaster of a story or of a feature film just in a 25-minute film.
And I can imagine it. It's one of something that resonates with me because I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. Even before he became popular, you may have watched this. I don't know if you've seen his very first film, Rachel, called Following. It's a black and white movie.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've
Oh,
seen.
it's brilliant. If you get an opportunity, I highly recommend it. I want to say that it was about 45 minutes long and it was made in a black and white camera. And if memory serves me right, they asked Christopher Nolan at the time, hey, why did you choose to make it in black and white and why was it only 50 minutes? And his answer, it still resonates with me, especially, as somebody who's Indian, who's used to watching movies that are 3 hours long. I mean, I come from the southern part of India, so I don't watch Bollywood movies, but it's just native. It's a different Tamil language is my native language, but it's still the movie length is somewhere 2.5 hours roughly, and almost 90%. If even if I spoke for a larger population, and I'm going to be vilified for this, but uh, a lot of those movies, a majority of them don't necessarily, in my opinion, mandate like 150 minutes of runtime. But it's the culture that when people take their vehicles in India and they go to the movies, that you expect it to be entertained for that long. So it is almost upon the creator to stretch any content that they had to 2.5 hours. And when Christopher Nolan answered the question to his, someone asked him why was it only 50 minutes, he was like, "Well, I didn't have anything more to say after 50 minutes." And I was laughing for like a good 2 minutes after I heard that answer. I was like, no, Christopher, you're supposed to stretch it, and then I guess he's made much lengthier movies. But
Yeah.
the reason I want to share that story is uh, the kind of a question I have. I'll come back to this. What does it cost filmmakers typically to create this? Just so as somebody who's interested in creating content, somebody who's watching this,
Sure.
uh, they I mean, what are they looking at if they're located in the US? Let's start there. How much money are they looking at in terms of, it probably spans a spectrum, but I just want to get a ballpark as to what might it cost.
I mean, they really can vary. I have seen some short films that are created for a few $1,000s, and then I've seen some that are created for $50,000. I've seen some for um you know they they totally range based on the storyline and based on um it could be anywhere. It could be higher than 50K as well. But then on the flip side, I've also seen feature films that are created for 50K, or I've seen them that are created for 100 million
Yeah,
for
like the Blair Witch Project, for instance, right? Okay.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you can see, yes, the difference between some of them, but the budget alone doesn't necessarily indicate whether or not it's a short film. That the budget has nothing to do with the length of the film. Um But, I mean, the storyline also doesn't have anything to do with the budget either, right? Like, you could tell a really, really compelling story in 5 minutes, or you can tell a very stretched out
Yeah, no, absolutely.
storyline for 3 hours. So and that 3-hour film probably was upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars. So, um, it also does give time back to the consumer as well to be like, "Okay." But film is also not just entertainment, right? It's also one of the biggest forms of education. So when you're also able to really be able to watch a film, whether that's a 10-minute film or a 3-hour film, you also want to make sure that you're able to take something away from it, not just, okay, that was $100 million film, so the cinematography was great.
Right. Okay. Not like What a World, I think, right? It was a Kevin Costner movie that cost a lot of money from a few years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and then the in terms of the number of people, the crew, from what you have seen, how many people are typically involved in creating this? I mean, the least that you've seen is like a solopreneur, somebody creates content, versus what is the typical size of the cast that you've seen, crew and cast, I should say, in these movies that get published on your platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think the crew is still pretty extensive, and they're doing the best that they can, right? With um, people doubling up on jobs. I mean, there's a lot of the independent films or a lot of the smaller films. You will see someone who is maybe the main actor, the writer, the producer, and maybe the editor too. They do focus on multiple.
Right.
They're like an entrepreneur. They wear
Right.
multiple hats. Um, but I mean, there's always so many people that are on set that are from a crew. I've seen casts where it's only two people, or I've seen it where it's five or six. But the crew is always pretty long because it does require a lot of hands to make a film.
Absolutely right. Okay, I'm asking this just to sort of digest, the basics, and then I can get a little bit deeper into these items. So it cost and then in terms of language, I want to come back to review in a second. But in terms of language, is it do you require it to be, say, in a particular language like English, or it doesn't matter what language it is?
No, it doesn't matter. But if it's in a different language, we do require subtitles.
Okay, language agnostic, and if it's a different language, you need subtitles.
Yep.
Okay, and then you mentioned review. I have a couple of questions about that. So, in other words, you have a certain requirement, because people are signing up for this platform, even if it's Netflix or Next Found Artist. There is a certain standard that people come to expect, and you want to maintain that standard, which is very different from YouTube, because YouTube doesn't promise anything. You discover the artist, you discover the people you like to want to follow or subscribe to, and then you find entertainment in that. I mean, is it fair, before I go to the question, Rachel, is it fair to say that these are sort of dramatically different models, like at two ends of a spectrum, or is it not as dramatically different as I'm sort of making that out to be?
So we say that we are more so YouTube meets LinkedIn meets TikTok is honestly also meets kind of Netflix. So we say that we're kind of a combination of all. And so how we kind of are throwing all those in together is the fact is um there from a YouTube standpoint, there's something for everybody. From a Netflix standpoint, we do focus on premium content. So we do not focus on UGC. From a TikTok standpoint, because we focus on the granular communities in order for us to be able to filter the films, and we filter through our catalog for each consumer to be personalized to their own viewing experience. And those, again, are the granular communities that tie back to the cast and crew and the content and topics. And then from the LinkedIn standpoint, that's where the collaboration capability and that feature will be released. We are releasing it in the spring 2025.
You mentioned collab. I want to go back to review in a second, but you mentioned collaboration here. So, could you speak to that a bit more? Like, what does collaboration? This is not collaboration. In other words, I am an artist. I'm a creator. I work with people, and I'm creating some content. But that's me collaborating with my crew and cast, which I presume has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, right? Who is
So
this collaboration
this
between?
would be basically like um I'm creating a film and I need an editor for this project. So it's basically like a job posting. So it's collaborating with the network for artists to be able to host jobs or find individuals for a specific role. So it's basically a job posting, but it goes a little bit deeper from the sense that you can tap into any of our partners, and so the partners are universities, they're organizations, they are film festivals. And so you could, if you wanted to tap in and be like, hey, I want to post a job like specifically for this university, or you could post it for a specific region, a specific zip code, a specific city. You can be like, hey, I am shooting film in Pennsylvania, and I'm looking for a cinematographer there, but I'm living in California, right? So it could be that you
I,
could tap
I
in.
I know somebody in that part of the world. His name is Night Shyamalan, I think. Sorry,
Yep.
keep going. Yep.
No. It gives you the opportunity to expand your network into people who are qualified that you wouldn't necessarily know, because a lot of the networking opportunities for people to find jobs are either through people that you know while you're on set, you're networking, or through a WhatsApp group. So this helps expand the capabilities for people to have access to job offerings that they wouldn't necessarily have access to by posting it and tapping into those individuals in that area.
So
And so,
Rachel, just so I'm following correctly, I'm a creator wants to create content. I need to hire somebody to play the lead actor, right? Or in this collaboration you're talking about is your platform. You're facilitating me finding somebody to play a role in my movie. In other words, I can
exactly,
fill, I can find an editor, a creator, anybody who needs to be part of a film in terms of crew and cast can be found through your platform. That's what you're talking about, right?
exactly. So we are having that feature that will be released in spring 2025.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, cool. So in other words, now I think I'm getting the okay. Now let's keep chugging on, and I promise by before we get to the end of it, I'm going to have a slightly better picture here.
Don't
Okay,
worry.
so collaboration is next. Distribution, right? So just to recap the challenges. Actually, let me do a recap after we go through. What about distribution? What do we mean by challenges associated with distribution?
So distribution is really having a place where you can build and find a community for people to come in and view your film.
So in other words, if I created this content and I'm distributing my content, and you mentioned exclusivity or not, we talked about that a little bit, but there is a way for me as a creator to publish this and make it available for people to consume, right? So that's you mentioned that as a pain point. Why, just to sort of play the devil's advocate, if I'm asking, hey Rachel, why is it a pain point? Because there are platforms that I can go and publish. YouTube is one we mentioned. I think there's other places I can't remember where YouTube has some restrictions and rules and regulations, but I believe there are other platforms that are a lot more open where you can go publish this. So what's the fundamental difference between me publishing it on these other platforms that I could possibly do versus like Next Phone Artist?
Yep. So, one, for short films, the only platform that really, really focuses on allowing short films is YouTube. And so, again, the biggest difference between us and YouTube is that we're helping with the marketing, which YouTube does not. It does go into a very large abyss of content with YouTube. So, with us, because we have the community tags that tie back to the film, that we are helping consumers come in to be able to personalize the experience. So we're helping them find the content that really resonates with them. And all of this does go back to the filmmakers who are getting the support from the marketing and all of the data metrics behind it. They get access to transparent metrics to be able to know who their audience is, know who their community is. It's the whole point is to really be able to help them find and build their communities, and then simultaneously for the audience to come in and also find their communities as well and feel that sense of belonging. Because the big point is that 75% of consumers don't feel represented in mainstream media. So we're offering that capability for the personalized experience, but also the time back by us filtering through the catalog and presenting the films to them that truly are personalized to however they're feeling in that specific moment.
Okay, makes sense. And going back to a question I had about review. Now, people are publishing content, and you have to have a certain standard for content to show up on your platform. What does that standard mean? Because the reason I ask is, this is a very subjective, it's not binaries, right? Zeros and ones, much like engineering. It's quite the opposite, right? It's creativity. So, what is actually fun and useful and awesome to one person or one community could be perceived very differently by another, right? So what does that review process entail? In other words, what can make it into Next Found Artist, and what fails to make it because it did not meet certain a set of standards that you expect for it to meet?
Right. So we do have a whole list of like submission requirements, but it really goes back to again, all of our films have gone through the festival route and have not been picked up for distribution at the moment. So from that standpoint, they are more premium content than they would be from a UGC standpoint. And then from the content standpoint, follows the guidelines of basically every other platform. Is just no hate, no content that is um
No, I get, so in other words, bullying or hate
yeah,
and
yeah,
divisiveness and all of those things, right? You want to make sure it's clean, good content that people are.
correct.
Uh, uh, but let me ask sort of a question there. Um, Maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Uh, we talk about free speech, right? Freedom of expression, and there is a fine line there. Uh, does it mean? I mean, what I'm trying to see how to phrase this question. How subjective is the review process? In other words, is it run through a tool like an automated platform that actually makes these decisions in an unbiased manner with no preconceived notions, or is it actually going through a process where humans are involved, where they're making decisions on every piece of that content?
So there's right now it's human, so there's multiple humans that are viewing it and are basically, again, because all of our content does go through the festival route, that we are not the first people who are viewing the content simultaneously. So that does help from the review standpoint, and then from us, we have multiple human beings that are also reviewing it, and that are come from multiple different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, who are also reviewing it. But there have been other submissions that have been submitted that we are because of that, we are going to be building out a tool that will help from a standpoint of reviewing the text, reviewing the actual visuals as well, so that it will be simultaneously both a tool as well as a human review.
Okay, makes sense. And then I think those, at least the first half an hour, I'm trying to understand more from the creative side of things, right? And then we can sort of segue into the technology side of things as well. Are there any other items from a creativity standpoint before we get into the actual intersection of creativity and technology? Is there anything on the creative side that we probably haven't asked so far, Rachel? Is there other things that you want to add to our this part of the discussion?
Um, we are releasing a new version in December.
The new version of your platform, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And
That's a
so,
good segue into getting into the technology side of things. Now, there's two parts to this problem. You said you are a creator, like you're a screenwriter, but that's two roles as I see it, correct? One is you're a contributor to your own platform, right? That's and I mean, unless you use it, we build our own platforms and products. So how do we know how good or where improvements could be, right? So that's important that you are a contributor to your platform as well. So is it two different hats that you're kind of wearing that are mutually exclusive from each other? One is the creative part of Rachel that's creating this content and publishing it. And the other part is, okay, once the content has been created by somebody called Rachel, even if almost assuming that it's not me who did this, trying to understand the challenges of what this platform should do. Like, how should it compete? How should it differentiate itself? What are its unique selling propositions? And all of the sides of business, right? I don't know. I mean, I want to dig a little bit deeper, but at the offset, does that make sense as a high level question?
yeah, yeah. And so we say we're a platform for filmmakers by filmmakers. And so what that means is that we talk to filmmakers every day. I mean, and even in the research phase, I think we spoke to upwards of like 1,000 filmmakers just to really understand what everybody was experiencing. What is everybody's wish list? What can we do to help it be a more seamless, not such a difficult process or painful process? And how do we make it the most beneficial for both the filmmakers and for the consumers? So from a research standpoint, that never ends and our door is always open, and we love communicating with all the filmmakers to really understand. I mean, we have filmmakers that are amazing individuals. I mean, all of them are amazing individuals, but they're all like, yes, we'll be testers, we'll be giving the feedback. And I'm always like, if there's anything that you come across that you're like, hey, I would love if this was a capability, if this was an option, I'm like, for us to always be for filmmakers by filmmakers and beneficial for both consumers and for the filmmakers, we have that open transparency with the filmmakers that we work with, and we always say that to them, that if whatever your wish list is, we will do our best to help you. And so we do have that transparent open dialogue with any filmmaker who we cross paths with.
Okay, perfect. So let me ask a few questions from a technology standpoint. Right now, let's say I want to be a filmmaker. Sometimes you know that you could be good at what you might want to possibly do, but there are other times, unfortunately, as humans, we discover by doing it, failing, and hopefully retrying. Or sometimes, there's two paths to failure, as I see it. One is it tells you that, Krish, you shouldn't even be in this business to begin with, right? You know what I mean? At least, there's no right or wrong answer, but I come from a school of thought where I say, you know what, everyone has a unique skill. It takes time to find your calling. Hopefully we all find it at some point, and then work on that calling. For instance, like I think Anthony Bourdain mentioned, if I recall correctly, he was 44 when he found his calling. Right. But maybe at some point people realize that I'm not good at this, I should be doing something else. So there are some harsh truths that we have to subject ourselves to, right? And I want to ask this from a sort of a, not a creativity standpoint, maybe also from a technology standpoint. You encourage people to go use your platform to publish this content and then make a living out of this. What if Chris shows up, creates content that's so absolutely silly and meaningless that it shouldn't even be here? Is the first check sort of a checkpoint? Rachel, you mentioned it goes through you mentioned the, sorry, was it the awards or festivals, right? You mentioned the festivals. Does it mean content that's showing up on your platform is already vetted to some extent, meaning you don't have to worry about this being utterly silly, and you don't have to like reject this because it makes no sense? Like, is it all kind of good enough before it comes close enough to your platform?
Um, Great question. So just right now, until we have the technology that will help us be built out to help with the review process, majority of our films are through the festival route right now. And so, um, but just to go back to the storyline from the silliness, if there was a calling for an individual to share that story, it's not a meaningless story. It deserves a home somewhere. For us, we are starting with sharing those films that do go through the festival route and helping them find their communities and find their home. And then there will hopefully be down the line a way for us to help all the emerging filmmakers have a place for their stories that were meaningful for them to be able to share. And if it was more of just a fun, film that they just made with a bunch of friends, then that quality of that film itself may not meet our standards, but it still requires a home, and there are still other platforms that would be perfect for that individual art. But for us right now, the easiest response is yes, we are focusing on a lot of the films that do go through the festival route, just because there are so many films that are through the festival route and don't get picked up for distribution.
Okay. And then in terms of, coming back to the technology side of things, right? One of the things I've had a conversation with a lot of founders recently is the notion of product market fit, right? As creators, not like a creator as a filmmaker creator, I'm talking as a creator of a company. We identify a problem and then we want to solve that problem. We look to see if there's other solutions out there. I'm sort of trivializing the process, but the gist of it is you try to see if there's other potential solutions out there. And if there are, you want to differentiate yourself from what somebody else is doing, and you bring something to the market. At least that's where the challenge starts, right? It doesn't end there. So for somebody who's thinking, hey, you know what, there are so many of these OTT platforms, if you will. Like we talked YouTube, we mentioned Netflix, there's Apple TV, there's like 200 subscriptions that we need to have these days. And you mentioned people are moving away from it, and I think I can understand it because I watch English and Tamil content, which is my native tongue. I have to have subscriptions like 6 different platforms for me to watch like 2 movies a month just because it doesn't show up where it needs to be. So how do you differentiate? Like, in other words, if I'm a creator, uh, how do I look at next found artists compared to Netflix, Apple TV, and Paramount, and all of these big, massive, multi-billion dollar companies out there?
Yeah. All of our films, we really emphasize diversity and inclusivity is really so we lean into a lot of films that have authentic storylines, that have um really impactful and meaningful stories, but that are inclusive for all communities, that help people feel represented no matter who you are. Um, and again, one of the biggest things is that we do have shorter content films. So you can still be entertained, you can still learn something new, and you can still have the rest of the 2 hours and 30 minutes left that you maybe allocated those 3 hours for. Um, so from us, I mean, it's not that those platforms don't have those types of films. Of course they do. They're wonderful films. We are sort of the middleman between the festivals and those platforms. So what we're doing is we're helping the films that go through the festival route to be able to build up their communities, to be able to build up their audiences and their homes and their followings. We're hoping that consumers who are looking for um, more inclusive storylines, but also more sense of a community and a sense of belonging through art, do come and find their next favorite artist, right? Their next sound artist. And that they don't just watch this one film. That's what is also the main differentiator for our marketing is we highlight the film, but we really amplify the filmmaker because we want people to come and watch their film, but we want them to follow these artists throughout their entire creative journey, not just this one film.
Okay.
So that um, any other films that they do create in the future, whether they find a home with Next Found Artists or another distributor, um, that it was a meaningful process and an impactful process along the way, and that we were able to help them be found.
Okay. So you mentioned a few pain points for artists, but I want to look at them as your unique selling propositions as well, right? I asked a question about distribution that you just clarified, where there are other platforms that you compete with, and you provide certain features, the reasons why people should potentially be posting on your platform. That's from a distribution standpoint. But when it comes to funding and collaboration, is it fair to say that I don't know if Netflix or any of those other large platforms provide any kind of support, or do they, in other words, would those be uniquely specific to your platform, or do other platforms do something like that as well?
So they help with the development. So they help with actually funding projects. I can't say what our future holds at the moment of helping with the development standpoint, but our key focus is from an AVOD model, so helping to give back a revenue share for the artist, but also knowing that we are not taking ownership. So all that artists have to do for us is give us a 30-day notice that they would like to be removed from the platform, and they can have their film back. Whereas some of these other platforms, you sign a deal and you are locked in for a year, you're locked in for multiple years, but you get one fee. For us, we're giving them the tools to hopefully be found and continue to amplify who they are so that the revenue can come through. And we're never promising that they're going to be found. We're just amplifying and giving them the tools to help them be found. But for us, because we just require a 30-day heads up to be removed, and then they can go and provide that film or access anywhere that they would like to.
Okay, got it. And then we saw the website, nextphoneartist.com. Do you have a native, like a mobile app where they can watch this content as well?
We are building out the mobile app and the TV app, and that should be, we're aiming for summer 2025.
Oh, okay, perfect. So they can watch it on any of these clients, so to speak, essentially, right? From a different technology differentiation standpoint, I can imagine, how you differentiate yourself as a company. I'm sure you have like 10 different things that you've already done and you're planning to do as well. Like you said, new features coming out. From a technology standpoint, I can think of a few questions that I have, sort of a comments. Just as a developer, as somebody who's running an engineering company, I have some thoughts about what kind of features that there could possibly be. But before I even go creative there, I want to understand what are some of these technology features that you think would be sort of compelling to your audience? Like, in other words, it could be even basic things like providing feedback or comments or ratings, yada yada yada. But if you could just speak to some of your core technology features, either you have them today or you're actually in the process of making them or building them, if you could just share some of those.
Yeah, I think the biggest feature that we're excited about that will be in the December release is the ability to, it's basically like creating your own carousel. So it's eliminating the endless scrolling because you're coming in and you're selecting again the communities that tie back to the cast and crew and the content topics, and you just select them, and then we are filtering through the catalog for the consumer. So it's basically underneath the section that is today's vibe. It's a completely personalized experience to every single time that you come in, and that it would be based on however you're feeling in that moment, what you want to support, what you want to learn about, what you want to consume. And then we are presenting the films to you guys based on your selection, your personalized choice.
Okay. And when we talk collaboration as well, because that's, I'm presuming you mentioned a few pain points, but of those three, if you had to pick one, what do you think is the biggest pain point that precludes these creators from doing what they actually be wanting, that they want to do today?
Oh, distribution for sure is having people be able to see the films. So that's the whole point of making films, is for, even if it's just one person seeing it and resonating with it and feeling, you know, moved by it, or feeling inspired by it, helping them change their perspective or learn something new, whatever it is, just escape and be, entertained, whatever it is. That is the number one goal for all artists, is for being able to share their art and for people to see it. And so that's what we are truly hoping and helping for everyone to do, is to be able to share their stories and really help, because it's not just from a filmmaker standpoint of wanting to share their stories. That stat and that number was from a research from 2024, that 75% of consumers don't feel represented in mainstream media. I felt that way as a kid 20 years ago, and that number is still so high in 2024. But again, it's not due to the lack of films that are being created, it's just due to the lack of accessibility and finding them easily. So, what we're doing is we're helping to bridge those gaps. But we're also helping to bridge those gaps by making it easier to find the content that they want to find, making the films more accessible that are truly personalized to how someone is feeling from an identity standpoint or from their interest standpoint, to know that no matter who they are, that they matter and that they belong, and to also be entertained simultaneously.
Makes sense. What are some engineering challenges that we talked a lot about the creative side of things, but from an engineering standpoint, from a platform standpoint, uh, I have two questions reasonably specifically. The first one is a little more generic. If you could share some of your challenges, you're like, you know what, I wish this could be done faster, better, nicer, all of those Apple adjectives. What stops you from being able to do some of those things today? So if you could just speak to your challenges in particular.
Sure. Um, well, I never want to say I wish that we could. I mean, I think every entrepreneur is saying, I wish we could do it faster. I wish we can do it better. But I think that there's so much beauty in just knowing the speed and this pace that we're going at is what we're meant to be going at. And the whole point is, because if we go too quickly, if we create too quickly, we're not learning, we're not getting the feedback correctly. So for us, it's I mean, I guess I always want to say I wish that we could, you know, we have the roadmap and we have the timeline that we are focusing on from the other devices that are going to be created. I say summer 2025 and I'm like, oh my God, that's so far away. But I'm like, in reality, it's not. So,
Right.
um, I mean, sure, I wish that that was available today and right now, but I think I'm so excited and so, proud of my team for what we have and what we are releasing, and being able to get that feedback. And again, we also say that because we are, for filmmakers, by filmmakers, it's also for the consumer. If anybody was like, I wish that I had that, like, we do, we love the feedback, we love communicating, we love talking to people. And so we want to be the most beneficial for both filmmakers and both from consumers. Of course, we have ideas that we are constantly creating and features that we're constantly releasing, but that's, I think, entrepreneurship as a whole, is that we are very able to pivot and learn and grow and come up with new ways about how we can always make it the most beneficial and different for everyone to feel like it's a beneficial platform for them.
Absolutely right. But I want to ask you, any, like, from an engineering standpoint, from a technology and because when you talk about intersection of technology and creativity, you're like, hey, you know what? I wish the technology allowed me to do this, or perhaps allowed me to do this easier, right? And maybe if it is in the context of today's
Sure.
generative AI as well, or
Yep.
if you want to talk about how, if any of that is changing what you're doing, I just want to understand. Uh, what are some roadblocks that you would have as a creator who's creating this platform, and then you're like, you know what, the technology is there but maybe not to the extent that you're expecting for it to be?
Right, right. I mean, there's plenty of that, right? Because again, we are a startup. So from a technological I would say it's not a disadvantage, but maybe just a hiccup, is when we are releasing the TV app, because a lot of the different TV apps have different languages. We are determining based on like the research and the usage of each of the different platforms. We need to know which ones to be releasing first, which is also something that, we wish that we could release all of them simultaneously. And so when we say TV apps, we mean like an LG versus a Samsung versus a Roku versus an Apple TV. Like all of them have different languages that we need to be able to create the app for. I wish that there was one way to combine them all together,
Right.
um, which that's my wish list. And then from a creator and a user standpoint, because we are web based right now, I mean, I think that as we just continue to grow, like we are in the December release, we have the ability the um for the creators to get transparent data dashboard. They're going to get the submission form into the platform. They're going to get the features for the filtering capabilities. But I mean, I think that everyone is going to be like, well, I wish that there was a different feature, a new feature. For us, it's just continuing to release what we have and getting the feedback to be able to learn and adjust as we see from the information that we're getting.
One of the challenges I can, this is being a bit presumptuous, so correct me if I'm wrong. One of the challenges I can imagine you as a company having could be, you have to make your platform available on multiple clients. You mentioned a TV app, and even within TV, it's Samsung, Apple TV, Roku, and then the web platform and mobile. Now that's going wider because people want to consume this content in one of n number of ways, like it or not. But the other side of it is you adding a lot more features vertically in each of those platforms, right? So in other words, you're not supporting seven different platforms or clients, but you can do 50 different things on the web app, for instance. How do you make, is that challenging? Like, how do you on one side you want to make this available on multiple platforms, multiple clients, so people can actually consume it, but that means you probably cannot build as many features in any platform as you could have otherwise done. So how do you sort of balance this? I mean, is that a challenge, first of all, and if so, how do you balance that out?
Well, I think that's why we're starting with just the web app right now, is to be able to release and learn from the web functionality before we start to release it on, um, instead of doing the bare minimum on every device. We're focusing on one device, we're learning on the different devices, we're releasing on one device. And then from there, being able to grow and scale based on the learnings that we're able to take away so that it is accessible for a larger scale audience.
Makes sense. Yep. So I know we from an engineering or a technology intersection standpoint, Rachel, I know I asked some high level questions just to understand the basics here, but are there items that we've sort of not talked about that you want to include from a technology standpoint, whether it's publishing it on different platforms or the features, something that I've not actually brought to the table?
Um, I mean, we have amazing partners that we are, from a technology standpoint, that we are looking to incorporate to help us enhance the viewing experience from both a consumer standpoint, but also from an artist feedback. So I won't go too much into those, but I will say that we are looking to, again, provide different offerings through our technology stack and through our technology platform itself to really be beneficial, again, for both the consumers and for the artists.
Right. And then in terms of pain points, you mentioned collaboration. You mentioned three things there, right? Collaboration, funding, and distribution. One other thing I want to ask there is training. Do you see artists who want to be able to create content, but they don't necessarily have the adequate training that they possibly need to have? Is that a problem at all? And if so, do you have plans to sort of support it as part of your list of things that you're doing?
So we are starting to host monthly screenings in both New York and LA. And that will be built up where we will have one of the filmmakers that will be released on our platform. They'll come, we'll do a little screening, we'll do a Q&A, again, focusing and emphasizing on who the filmmaker is. But it will be made up of just, people who love art, so consumers, audiences, and then both filmmakers as well. And then afterwards, we're going to be hosting a networking event so that people can come and learn and they can ask questions, they can get feedback. So it's not just being able to have the community by a viewing experience, but also having a community in person where those people who are thinking about, getting into the film space or creating a film or have questions or things like that, we're hoping that we can help build up their own community in their community as well.
And then, is your content predominantly the content that you're hosting currently, as of the time of this conversation that we're having? Is it predominantly based out of the US, or are there creators publishing it from other parts of the world as well?
Um, Primarily the US, but we do have from other countries that are in our catalog as well.
And then within the US, I'm just curious: is there a part of the country that's more creative than another, or is it where is your content coming from generally?
It is it's a mix of all over. I mean, we have the East Coast, we have the West Coast, we have the Midwest. I mean, we really do have a filmmakers from all over. And that's the beauty of it, is that there's art does not have just one central location. It is everywhere amongst us all.
Beautiful. And then do you see, as content gets published by creators from different parts of the country, are you seeing that as is it a natural reflection of the way they grew up, the environment that they live in, or are the creators typically disconnected in a good way, that they might be living in one part of the country, but the content almost has nothing to do with that part of the country?
I think art in general has um its own take in general. It, like, meaning that each artist has their own take and their own perspective, and that's really the beauty that we're able to provide for both the artists and for the consumers, is that no matter where they're from, again, their story is going to be from a different perspective regardless. And so what we're doing is providing all these different perspectives of these different communities and of these different cultures a place for people to experience what these perspectives are, because that's really the beauty of it, is, again, back to my personal experience and how this all came about, is that I discovered, by being in the production space, the lack of diversity that's throughout the entire creative process. And when you don't have, again, diversity, you don't allow for different perspectives. For us, working with independent artists, regardless of where they are located, their perspectives of their communities and of their cultures definitely differ, but they allow for consumers to learn about those different perspectives, to be able to actually see the different perspectives. And so it just really provides a space for everyone to feel represented and to really see stories that matter.
you know and what is one of all the things that keep you going, and as a business owner, as a founder, as a creative artist, if you have to pick one thing that you're like, this is, all of us have like one singular reason. There's a number of reasons we do whatever it is that we do, but there's sometimes, I think, there's one really compelling reason that we end up doing, that we're doing whatever it is that we're doing. What would that be for you, Rachel?
I needed this when I was growing up.
You as a creator, right? As a creator or as a business
Oh,
person,
no, as a probably as a consumer. So I knew that I came up with this idea when I was 11 that I wanted to be able to create a safe space where all communities could feel a sense of belonging through the power of art. But that stemmed back to me knowing at 6 years old that I was looking for films for a sense of belonging and for a community. And when I couldn't find it, that's when I started to write. And so this was what I needed, is to be able to find content that helped me feel a sense of belonging, that helped me find a community, helps me be entertained. Um, and then also from, an artist standpoint, where do I share my stories? How do I even find the right cast and crew to tell my stories? So it's kind of a twofold, is that I needed this from both a consumer standpoint, but then also from an artist standpoint growing up.
okay. And then from a sales slash marketing standpoint, would to have more people become aware of your platform, as you grow as a company and as an individual, is it, are you sort of, would it be more like bringing really A grade, or I don't know what it's called, like these Hollywood popular artists to show up on the platform, or how does that work from a marketing standpoint? I mean, does a Brad Pitt have to be a next phone artist for you to, get that next level of traction? Or, just how does that work?
I mean, if Brad Pitt wants to come onto the platform, we welcome him. Don't get me wrong. Um, I mean, we have a variety of different level of, I don't want to say actors because it's artists in general. So we have some that are fully emerging, that and then we have some that have been in the space for quite a while, and that they do have more well-known faces or names or um in general that are attached to the project. So it really is just the full variety of gamut that we run, and that it's um yeah, there's something for everyone.
Awesome. As we come to, the tail end of our session here, do you have, as you know, I wish I had creative skills. I don't, but as somebody who runs an engineering company, would you have any questions like that you would want to ask someone like me who's been in the business of engineering all of my life, essentially?
Sure. Um, have you ever built a TV app, an OTT app?
No, we've built. I was just going to say, we our products. We own a web app. We own a mobile app, native mobile apps on the app and Play stores, and we publish APIs.
Mm.
A TV app is not something we have built, not yet. Maybe we collaborate, we build it, but we have not built one yet.
Okay. We'll continue the conversations. Would love to have those conversations.
Awesome. Uh, so but I think, just to recap what we talked about here, right? And I'm going to include the links to, next phone artist and to your LinkedIn profile. And if there's any other links that you want for us to include, let us know, and we're more than happy to do it. So folks, here again, just to do a really quick recap, we talked, to Rachel Galperin, the founder and CEO of Next Phone Artist. We talked about a number of things from a creative standpoint and from a technology standpoint. The idea behind Rachel, as she mentioned, creating the platform here is to sort of facilitate the intersection of technology and creativity for independent filmmakers, and sort of, also foster engagement, between filmmakers and their audiences, and sort of help with some of the challenges that they have. And we talked about three different pain points: funding, collaboration, distribution being those three. And we also talked about, next phone artists, the features, the requirements, the review process, the length of films, 5 to 40 minutes, the ad revenue model, how Rachel and her team would actually help, creators create and publish this content. So that sort of was the gist of the conversation. Anything else that, and as if you could have some closing comments here, Rachel? It could be about your platform, about yourself. It could be words of inspiration. But you know what? Before I have you make those closing comments, I actually forget. I try to ask this of all of my guests. Sometimes I just forget about it. Uh, what is your most favorite food? And again, our audience is predominantly in the US, but people are in different parts of the world as well. So if it's not super obvious to them, you're going to have to explain a little bit. What is the thing that you like? If someone woke you up in the middle of the night and you would feel like eating, what would that be?
It will always be sushi.
Okay. a little bit more like one of my previous guests, I think it was Bob. Probably he mentioned he loves Japanese sushi, not so much American sushi. And he talked a lot about Japanese sushi. So, what specifically, what kind of sushi do you like to eat?
Well, did he go into like sashimi or going
Oh,
into?
he went into some detail, but you have to remember, sorry, I'm a vegetarian, sort of borderline vegan, and I
Got it.
only understand certain types of food, so I'm not familiar.
Yeah.
And sushi is something, there's this avocado cucumber sushi. There's one or two veggie sushis, and
Yep.
I've lived most of my life in the U.S., but I was born and raised in India. So for me, as a vegetarian, vegetables need to be cooked to death before I can eat them. They need to really have to be cooked, right? If they're not cooked, I'm not generally eating them. So I'm familiar with sushi, just
Yeah.
not somebody who's eaten enough of it. So if you could just talk a little bit about the type of sushi that you enjoy eating.
Yeah. I mean, I think tora, which is like a piece of tuna, which is I believe it's the belly fat of it. I think so. It's very, very good. And that it's just like basically a raw piece of the tuna.
And have you been to Japan?
No, but it's on my wish list, so I really want to go there.
Oh, lovely. Perfect. Awesome. I think I've gotten a good idea. This conversation is about, what you do, what your platform does. And I think, folks hopefully should have some sense of what it is. And then to find out more, they can go to, get nextfondartist.com and learn more about it. Anything else you want to say before we call it wraps here?
Um, if anybody has any questions, definitely feel free to reach out at artist at nextfoundartist.com.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel. Again, thanks for taking the time to chat. I'm sure folks are watching this. If they have questions, they can, reach out to you through the links that we end up including on the podcast. It is good to sort of understand, a creative perspective. Most of the time we're talking engineering, but today at least we got the opportunity to talk both technology and creativity. So it was awesome. So thanks much. Just after I stop, just wait because it takes a couple of seconds to upload. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.